My name is David Dorfman, and the PAD taught me to be humble, to be kind, to listen, and to create.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the PAD podcast. My name is Rob Morgan. I teach design in the PAD. I'm typically never allowed anywhere near audio editing software, but here I am and hosting a podcast. Never say never. And I am so delighted to welcome to the podcast today David Dorfman. David Dorfman graduated from WashU PAD in dance. I believe David's our first interviewee in the dance area. We have a remarkable dance program at WashU, if you didn't already know. Mr. Dorfman himself is an internationally known dancer and choreographer. He teaches as a full professor at Connecticut College, where he also got his MFA. He is a remarkable force in the area of dance. He's choreographed off-Broadway and on Broadway. He has got quite the career. I am delighted to interview him and share that interview with you. So I will stop talking here and shift right over to the interview. Enjoy. All right, my guest today in the PAD podcast is David Dorfman. I'm very excited. David, you are our first drama, should I say dance? I said it wrong already. Dance alumni from WashU's Performing Arts Department. We have a very strong, well-taught dance program here, and I'm just so delighted to talk to you. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm very excited to have you on the podcast to talk about your career, you might say, your academic career at WashU and what you've done beyond. You're now a full professor at Connecticut College, Guggenheim Fellowship Award winner, an amazing dancer, founder of the David Dorfman Dance Company, DDD, I think it's affectionately called.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much for donating some time to this podcast. So, if you don't mind, if you could give a quick snapshot of your, where you grew up, what maybe intrigued you about the WashU program. I know that you got if I'm not mistaken, a business degree at WashU. Talk a little bit about your pre-college and during college time.
Sure, absolutely. So I grew up in suburban Chicago. My family, I was born in the city, and we moved when I was a couple years old, but we'd go into the city every weekend just about, and I could actually see the city limits from my house.
I
So we
see.
weren't that deep into suburbia, but so I had kind of maybe the best of both worlds, so to speak. But I loved to do social dance as a kid. I would just try to learn every social dance from TV, from Hullabaloo, Soul Train, Shindig, and any TV thing I could, and I would imitate James Brown. I was a really competitive baseball player. I played
Nice.
baseball for half the first season at WashU. I was on the varsity baseball
Is
team.
that right? Okay.
Yeah, it
Nice.
wasn't that great, let's say, but I did play on the team,
What
and
position did you play?
I was catcher third base.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice,
Yeah, I caught my whole life and played third base in later
nice.
years. Started when I was like 8 years old. And but I mentioned that because I would use a baseball bat to imitate the microphone that James Brown would use in his unbelievable dancing routines that go back to a religiosity from the church and a cape and just amazing. So
Sure.
I had movement idols, and some of my favorite stuff in, say, baseball and football. I played 4 years of high school football, was basically running away from people or or chasing the ball.
I
I
love it.
wasn't that great sitting still. And the reason I like to be a catcher in baseball is that I was kind of the organizer. The
Yeah.
catcher's in on every pitch, so you don't get bored and daydream in the outfield.
Yep.
And you're kind of the captain in a way that you position everyone. And I like I was just making, where I teach at Connecticut College, I gave a toast to the senior class last night, and I
Nice.
said that if I wouldn't have been a dance person, I would have been a coach, which I did a little bit. Coaching girls softball is one of my first jobs when I was really getting interested in dance.
Huh.
Some kind of a therapist or a social worker. I
Oh,
was
wow.
really interested in the MSW program at WashU because it's such a fine one.
Yep.
And just the idea of helping people. and being in service. And I joked in the toast last night that I am all of those things now because running a dance company, teaching at a college for 20 years straight, you are a therapist, you are a coach.
Yes.
And I believe in positive reinforcement that began at WashU. And so I really think that my team sport upbringing with flashes of being a performer, writing music, taking transcendental meditation courses, but not telling the baseball team when I was in high school because I afraid they would ostracize me. All those things were formative of what we think of as the essential liberal arts education, whether it's at a fine university like WashU, where there's arts and science, but related. I had so many friends in engineering and architecture, and I ended up in the business school or at a small liberal arts college where I teach now. So
Uh-huh.
those precepts, I think, were important to me, even though I didn't know what they were when I
Sure.
was even a kid.
Mhm.
And then let's fast forward to high school, maybe junior year, maybe senior year. They were doing West Side Story. It wasn't that old of a play then because
No.
I'm old. And I'm peeking into the auditorium not having enough courage to audition for West Side Story in high school, and but really wanting to do that. So let's fast forward to coming to Wash U, which there was a really nice guy from our high school, and he was attending Wash U. And so I visited him and had a great weekend and just felt comfortable.
Nice.
Also, my mother attended Washington U for her first year of college.
Oh,
She
wow.
stayed with an aunt in U City, and then she transferred to University of Illinois, where my sister ended up going to school, and where I took my junior year away
Uh-huh.
from WashU. My junior year away at University of Illinois Urbana. So that plays into the story a bit.
Got it.
So I have this familial connection to Washington U and I had some cousins in town as well.
Sure.
So everything seemed right. I also got a nice scholarship, financial aid scholarship, and I just liked everything about it. And so
Sure.
there I was.
Yeah.
Um,
You mentioned
and
your mom
then
went to Wash U. Did she have an arts background of any kind or something totally different?
not an arts background.
Uh-huh.
She was pro arts. I remember her going to the symphony once a week, weekly, just
Sure.
really devoted to listening to lovely music.
Yeah.
Um, um, she was more kind of a political science, psychology, more humanities person.
Right.
Um, and sadly was not able to put her education just due to the time and illness, everything else, just did not have that career,
Sure. Sure.
it was just, time period
Of
and
course.
being a woman, a smart woman, but just didn't work out that well.
Yeah.
And I do have this memory. I have so many memories of my late mom, of her selling World Book encyclopedias door to door.
Wow.
So you think of all the knowledge in whatever 26 volumes, whatever that is,
Yes.
but that's not a great job for a college graduate to be doing.
No.
Is lugging those around. Yeah, so it's kind of a mixed relationship. My dad did not go to college,
Hmm.
was kind of a tougher Chicago kid that barely
Sure.
finished high school, but
Got it.
oddly enough, was worked at various theaters,
Oh,
like Chicago Lyric Opera House, and
sure.
handed out flyers on the West Coast for Harold Kreutzberg, a famous German expressionist, an early modern dancer.
Hmm.
And my dad had an incredible theatrical flair.
Hmm.
And I asked him to be a character in several of our dances in our dance company. And he would actually go on tour with us
I love it.
and in his
Nice.
80s, and he would keep me up all night because he would ask me question after question. I said, Dad, we have a matinee tomorrow. We have to get some sleep. He said, okay, David, absolutely. I'm on your turf. Let's do that. Oh, by the way, one more question.
Yes.
Okay, what is it? So yeah. And my
He
mom
sounds adorable.
he is. And my mom was hesitant at first when it was after graduating from WashU, and I stayed in St. Louis for 2 years,
Hmm.
and I got the courage to dance. And this is another story that I can tell regarding Martha Myers, my mentor up here in this neck of the woods, late mentor. But I remember telling my mom that I was going to give up an 1 year MBA that I'd been admitted to at Northwestern
Mm.
to go and become a part-time grad student to get an MFA in dance. And she was, oh. But I kind of threw a curve and I didn't do it necessarily on purpose, but at the time I was dating someone who was a lot older than I, married before and had a couple of kids. And
Wow.
so my sweet mother was much more concerned about that than the the leaving business and going to dance. So somehow
Nice.
I kind of,
Nice.
and that
That was your
relationship,
decoy. That was your
yeah,
diversion. Yes,
yeah,
I like
you
that
have to have decoys in theater.
for sure.
Yeah. So
Sorry, I interrupted your
everything,
story though. You
no.
were visiting. You visited Wash U. Your sister is over at Southern Illinois. Is that right?
My sister, 10, 11 years older, she had long graduated from University of
Gotcha.
Illinois in Urbana.
I gotcha. Sorry.
Yeah. But I had a familial connection is that's where my mom graduated from as
Right.
well after a year at Washington U. So I
Right.
had some familiar, I wouldn't quite call it a legacy, but I had some familial connection to
Sure.
Washington U. Really liked it. When I arrived, I had, even though I had business in my entire family, I didn't intend to do business, and I loved arts. I loved arts and sciences, and so I had, as I said, not having the courage to audition for West Side Story. I befriended the theater folks in high school. And so we would take forays into Chicago and see the then kind of burgeoning but nascent repertory theater system. So
Sure.
Steppenwolf had just begun or just beginning infant stages,
Yeah.
and all these wonderful small repertory, sometimes storefront theaters. And I just loved it. And then an occasional trip to Second City and comedy clubs. And so I thought, this is so fascinating.
Mhm.
I don't, I can't see myself career wise. I just can't see that. But I love this. So that was a seminal experience. So when I got to WashU, one of my first influential classes was a philosophy class with William H. Gass.
Yes.
Again, late professor,
Yeah.
esteemed author.
Yes.
And if you
Stephen
can
Sater, our
picture,
earlier guest, Stephen Sater, raved about him as well.
yeah, it was an incredible class. And he may have been, I can't remember for the same year, but he may have been in that class,
Sure.
or it could have been that he was in that class even the same year, because the crux of my story is me entering this beautiful, I forget what the lecture hall was called. It was, on the kind of the Brookings side of campus, I think.
Sure.
And this deep wood, weathered wood, chairs, benches, whatever it was, and pretty steep lecture hall. And students and upper class people had coffee mugs and they were smoking cigarettes in the class because this was 1973, the fall of 1973.
Sure.
And I was so intimidated, Rob, by the end of that class that I fled to the business school. And it was a great class. It was just like I felt like I was completely and utterly over my head.
Sure. Sure.
And I was also taking Spanish. I was taking a psychology course that
Mhm.
I adored the professor, and we went on these wonderful field trips, and we went on a Spanish class retreat to this
Mhm.
country setting. So I had a great first year,
Yeah.
but I was also intimidated by the knowledge that existed at WashU. So it's like a blessing and a curse.
Of course.
And I thought, I need to quantify something. I think I've been kidding myself about being an artist or being able to handle really open-ended aesthetics. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm exaggerating now for the
No.
purpose of a story and a podcast, but it's kind of true.
Yeah.
So I went to the business school, and it was very kind of small. It wasn't the elaborate business school that it is now. And they welcomed me with open arms. And I enjoyed my classes there. It was still, computers were like punch cards.
Yeah.
And one of the first assignments was to regulate a soft drink and how much sugar and how much carbonation, and
Sure.
you would put that in and you wouldn't get a result. Now you would come back the next day and see how your your calculations turned out.
I
And I
love
thought it
it.
was kind of fun. And then I remember, this is, I guess, my last year there. And we're sitting in class, and this wonderful guy named Keith Sherman
Mhm.
says to me, David, I know that you're on some level interested in the arts. I've seen you dance around at parties. I know we have this in common. Um, I just saw a chorus line on Broadway, and it's Michael Bennett, and they've done this incredible thing where it's basically the most minimal set to be on Broadway in decades, and it's mirrors, and you need to go. And I
Uh-huh.
said, okay. So I went, and I stood at the back of the house, standing room ticket, and watched a chorus line,
Wow.
and kept in touch with Keith. And I just felt that, again, this idea that you're in business school, but you're thinking about arts administration, being an agent, being a publicity person, how we're people that are multifaceted and we do many things. And I can be an athlete, a dance person, a theater person, a business person all at once. So that's where WashU was really, really critical and key for
Hmm.
me.
Got it.
Um, and then the wonderful thing about Keith is that let's go 40 years later, whatever, I have the great fortune to work with Rebecca Teichman and Paula Vogel on Indecent.
Hmm.
They called me, I think it was the first day of May, Rebecca called me. I had done a piece called Green Violin
Hmm.
with her that had a lovely run in Philadelphia, but didn't make it to New York. And this is like 10 years later, and she calls and says, David, I have this project. I think you might be interested. And so she told me who it was with and what it was about. And I said, count me in. And it was also at Yale Rep as its
Yeah.
first production. And
Sure.
I'm 45 minutes from Yale Rep. So we did the first production there. We went to the Vineyard Theater, La Jolla. And
Yeah.
then we ended up in San Diego, and we ended up at the Vineyard Theater for its New York off-Broadway premiere. And we were working our tails off. It went well. And then I I got a call. Okay, so then it moves to Broadway, right? Surprise. I'm driving down, taking a student down to New York, and all of a sudden I get this call. We're moving to Broadway. It's like, oh my gosh. Just and so we're about to open on Broadway. And so I'm sitting at a coffee shop, and I'm just kind of, oh boy, whatever. And I get a call from the agent that's representing me, says, oh, you just got nominated for a Lortel Award.
Oh my
And
God.
I said, what's a Lortel Award? And because I'm so from the modern dance world, experimental
Sure.
postmodern dance world,
Sure.
and I've loved working on plays, but I'm not in that scene, or wasn't. This 2017, I guess.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, it's the off-Broadway Tonys. And I said, great, wow, that's exciting. So I thought I had no chance of actually getting the award. But I went to these, like they have like a reception for all the nominees. And there's Keith Sherman
Uh,
working, his publicity job. And it's like, oh my gosh. I don't know. It might have been I got nominated for the Cheetah Rivera Award. It might have been for the Cheetah Rivera. It doesn't matter. The
right.
point is that this is a long time. This is 1975, 76 to 2017.
Yeah.
And I see Keith Sherman, a WashU business colleague, a business school colleague. So
Yes.
that's how small the world is and how well-rounded WashU is.
Hmm.
So that's just kind of one way that I did the route. But let me complete it if I can.
Sure.
Is that I was studying. So let's hop back. Let's go to the first day I arrive at WashU. My parents leave me, and they're crying. I'm crying, whatever. And I go to like Telania's. I don't know if Telania still exists, and I get a 6-pack of Bud for my mini refrigerator, my like adult thing, and illegal. And I walked down the hall I sent in my housing application late, so I ended up in Koenig, the only all-male dorm.
Yes.
And I hear this great music coming out of a dorm room 3, 4 doors down. And so I wander down, I look in, I said, what music is that? And this a wonderful man, black man says, it's the Pointer Sisters, come on in. So I sat on his bed and a certain Rudy Nickens, and we just had our 50th year anniversary of deep, deep friendship. He's now the
Oh,
president of our board at David Dorfman Dance.
got it.
And yeah, so and the reason I mentioned that, other than deep, deep WashU connections, is that Rudy, who knows everyone, knew
Uh-huh.
everyone then as well. He said, "Yeah, I have a couple friends in the performing arts department. I want you to come and peek into a rehearsal with me." So there I was again, peeking into rehearsals in Edison. I think it was Edison that I was peeking into,
Sure.
and it made all the difference in the world. And I said, I want to do that, but I did not know how, Rob.
Right.
So my performing was I had super big hair. I can send you a picture. I wore sparkly shirts on weekends, and I wore really high platform heels. That I have another story if you'd like to hear about those heels, and a baseball glove, if you remind me. And we would go disco dancing. And we would go disco dancing in Herbie's gay club called Herbie's down in the Central West End. We would go to East St. Louis. I think it was called the Red Bull. And I also ended up a little bit later through the East St. Louis connection studying at the Catherine Dunham Studio, which is this, super famous, the
Of course.
anthropologist dancer, legendary figure. And
Yeah.
her first really, foundational studio was in East St. Louis. So I had that experience as well. But so Rudy my friendship with Rudy got me a little bit closer to the performing arts department. And I would remember wandering through there and seeing the frame posters of past productions, and seeing someone like Steven Sater, and seeing the professors. And it was great. Like what was it, Henry Chevet? Is that yeah, and just folks that had I remember some of the other professors I can't recall by name at this very moment, but they just seemed like people I wanted to get to know, and I wanted to gain their knowledge. And I started seeing a shift. Like, I want to know what they know more than I want to know, no offense, the business. And I had a wonderful organizational behavior professor in business, because there was a psychology and sociology of business. And I loved that because I'm a people person. I call what we do at DDD radical humanistic dance. But a lot of that came from organizational behavior, studying psychology at WashU. And then so I became ultra enamored with the performing arts department and would go see productions. But it wasn't until, and you can edit this out if you want, I went to University of Illinois for my junior year, after I had left the baseball team my first year, that I, in my second semester, after countless disco dance contests there and doing okay, but not studying enough in business school at U of I, and nearly flunking out of business school there, um, I decided, I got up the courage to take a dance class, because the captain of the baseball team was also the lead in the theater productions there.
Oh,
And it was the
nice.
first time I had seen this kind of mirror image of, and I hate to admit it, but it's so long ago, but like this male, a role model. I
Yeah.
don't know why I needed that, but somehow I did. We,
Yeah.
we grow at different paces. So I took a dance class. It was filled with theater folks at U of I, and some athletes, students from different parts of the campus, and I adored it. I
Mhm.
studied with a grad student who was a jazz person, and of course had the traditional crush on her. And it was, but I remember sitting in that little changing room and seeing folks that were really serious about ballet and other forms of dance, and watching the concerts, and saying, I really want to do this. I mean,
Mhm.
it was one step more than my interest in my first 2 years at WashU. And my girlfriend at the time, which is part of the reason I went there, which another not a smart move, like a high school girlfriend, but she was taking a theater course, did
Uh-huh.
not like to write papers. So I went to all the productions and wrote her theater, her
No,
theater papers. So I was just a
nice.
full, full force in. Then
Yeah.
when I returned
There's
to
like a
Washington
Cyrano de Bergerac parallel there.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Um, so when I returned to WashU for my senior year, all I wanted to do was dance.
Hmm.
All I wanted to do was dance. And so I remember Annalisa Mertz said, "What year are you?" And I said, "A senior." Oh, why? And because I
Why?
took it as a as a compliment because she has strong German accent and
Yes.
tough but super soft on the inside.
Sure.
And Mary Jean Cowell, Cunningham, Japanese cultural stuff was just so interesting. And then a guest there who wasn't there very long, Peggy Berg. She was one of the first people that said, "David, you could be a beautiful dancer."
Mm.
And I'm still friends with her. She taught for years at Colorado
Aw.
College. I saw her last fall, and when we performed out there. And so again, these just words here and there. A wonderful guy named Branislav Tomic,
Mm.
who was doing work in the community, had me in a dance,
Yeah.
and a favorite of the department. And then there was Suzanne Costello and Robin Wilson were the two stars. Robin Wilson was tall black woman who's still dancing like
Mm.
wonderfully, teaching at University of Michigan, and still a close friend of Rudy's. And then Suzanne Costello, who is a shorter white woman, and they were the two stars. And I was just kind of looking from the outside in,
Yeah.
but it's great to have that kind of idols and role models. So
Sure.
I kind of and I'm still friends with. Saw Suzanne in Colorado as well, and she no longer married to this other wonderful person named Stuart Pimsler, and he came out in 1970, I guess it was 78, and as his first job after getting an MFA in dance from Connecticut College. So he is the connector to Martha Myers.
I see.
He had
Yeah.
gotten his JD, had gotten his law degree, decided he did not want to practice law, and worked his way into the program at Conn College. Came out with this wonderful person, the person that I ended up being involved with, and all these funny stories of that age. And
Sure.
I took a community class from her and Saul, incredible dancer. And but Stuart was teaching there, and he said, "I'm going to introduce you to Martha Myers. You should really get in touch."
Hmm.
And that's how I did. I drove up to Milwaukee
Sure.
and auditioned for her at University of Wisconsin Milwaukee, where she was taking a semester on sabbatical in residence there.
Uh-huh.
And she said, "I can no way guarantee you, admission, but if I can't talk you out of it, you can come as a part-time student."
Oh,
So, and that's all it took. I packed my bags. I came here and worked into the program in 2 years. And I when we came here, my wife Lisa Race and I, when we moved here with our 2-year-old, similar story to me, 20 years ago, we bought a house right near Martha's, and that idea of being close to your mentor.
yes.
So that's how I got here, but it's all because of WashU. It's
Wow.
all because of the seminal, exciting, mysterious knowledge that I was able to dip into.
Hmm.
um, yeah, Greg Mayer was another professor that was there, and she taught Graham technique. And her son was in with Keanu Reeves. Alex Winter was her
Ah,
son. The Bob and Ted's
yeah,
Excellent Adventure. And I
exactly.
remember he at that time he was a little kid, and he was in like The King and I and all that. But and then there were local Mad Company, was a local dance company, and
Sure.
so I met all the folk. Brooke Clem is another dancer of that age, and I was just so into it. And then Annalisa Mertz was more of the Nikolai Lewis family of
Yeah.
dancing. And
Yeah.
so they would come as guests. And then one of the things that was a really beautiful, I would say coincidence, but I kind of don't believe in them. I believe that they're kind of meant to happen,
Hmm.
is that, as I mentioned, a wonderful, wonderful performer, educator, and Saul, who came with Stuart to do that residency. She had danced some of Daniel Nagrin's work. Daniel Nagrin is just a classic a dancer from the 50s on,
Sure.
Nagrin, and he did a solo concert in Edison. And this
Hmm.
was after I'd graduated, so I'm 2 years out. I had been working in business and taking Anne's community class at night. I would rip off my business suit and put on leotards and tights, which I don't wear anymore. But at that time, I
Sure.
didn't even know how to put them on, but I wore them. And he did this solo concert when he was 63,
Yeah.
where he did like six solos, one after another. He had an intermission, but he would kind of put up a screen and change costumes on stage. And he was doing these falls to his knees and these incredible turns and spins. And I said, if he can do that at 63, I'm in the audience at 23. I'm going to start now and dedicate my life to dance.
Wow.
And Anne introduced me to him, after the show.
Sure.
And then, oddly enough, that very summer, he taught here,
At Connecticut
20 feet,
College.
yeah,
Oh,
10 feet
interesting.
away from where I'm sitting right now. It was called
Wow.
Summer Scene 79.
Yeah.
Richard Schechner was here. Spalding Gray was still alive and was here.
Wow.
Um, and Daniel Negrin was here. And so I studied with him. And the first day of class, composition class, he said, anyone want to do, he was very gruff.
Yeah.
Anyone want to do errands for me? And I said, I raised my hand like that. So he became my, I call Martha Myers my dance mom, and Daniel Negrin my dance dad, became an incredible mentor to me. But
Nice.
all from meeting backstage at Edison Theater.
Amazing.
Um, yeah, so
Hmm.
the stories kind of go on forever. I can
Sure.
tell you a Made in France story.
Oh, yes.
Let's fast forward to, I don't know the year, maybe
You don't
92
have
or
to
something.
cite years necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know, early 90s or something like that. And
Sure.
probably through Annalise and Mary Jean, they arranged, there was a fellowship, and I can't remember the name of the fellowship, where a guest could come in for like a week.
Hmm.
So I came in for a week and I did as best I could, like a solo concert in the studio, in the
Yeah,
which I don't know what it looks like now, but I've been there in years. But in the studio that could be set up as a performance space.
exactly.
And yeah, and I had a couple people help me with these different pieces I was doing, and then I did one solo. It was called Out of Season or Eating Pizza While Watching Raging Bull. And and in it, I have you might have seen a picture if you were researching. It's like I have all these remnants of athletic equipment. It's
Yes.
an umpire's chest protector. There's one shin guard. There's an antique football helmet, which was my uncle's from LSU,
Wow.
and um, and it's like stand-up comedy, and it's some dancing, and then I give practice golf balls, which are those like plastic ones with holes in them. I
Sure.
give them to the audience beforehand, and at the end I kind of put the chest protector on and I edge forward, and then they throw the balls at me,
I love it.
and the balls look really beautiful as they come from the audience in the light.
Sure.
Well, I after the show, I kind of get myself together, and I met by I think at the time a sophomore maybe,
Hmm.
and her name is Liz Clara, and she might have been Liz White at the time, Elizabeth White, I can't remember.
Yes.
And she hands me this box that has a practice golf ball with a message on a piece of paper that's completely thread through the
The holes
the
of the golf ball.
the holes of the ball, exactly.
Oh,
And she said,
wow.
David, or whatever she called me, probably David, um, I'm really, it's really nice to meet you. I could not throw this ball at you. I don't know why. I knew it wouldn't really hurt you, but I just could not throw this ball. And I play violin. So after the show, I went into a tree. I think it's a tree right in front of Graham Chapel. I climbed into the tree, played my violin, and wrote this to you. I hope you will accept it.
Wow.
And so again, I got the chills thinking about that. Began a lifelong friendship.
Oh.
So
Mm.
a year or two after that, we came back as a company to do our first community project, which featured that solo, or part of that solo, called Out of Season, the Athletes Project.
Hmm.
And we had athletes from all over the St. Louis area performing on Edison stage. It was really a great experience. And then we did probably one of my Dan Fruit and David Dorfman live sax acts. I don't know if you saw any of that in there.
No.
We have a body of work called Live Sax Acts, wink, wink.
Nice.
And we probably did one of those pieces, and then one of our company dances.
Hmm.
And Liz was in the project, and she was a former gymnast. And um, we were slated to go to France to work with French athletes. And Liz found out about this and she said, David, I think I can write a grant here and go to a dean and get money to be your translator.
Ah,
Would you be into that? I
right.
said, sure, that sounds like a great idea all around. We could use your assistance. You're
Yes.
a great mover. You could help us with the choreography and with translation. And
Yeah.
she did. And so she came, again, I don't know what year it was, 94, 95, whatever. She came to Paris with us. While she's on that trip, she meets one of the French athletes named Quentin Augier, and they become fast friends. It turns out his parents have a sound-based theater company called A Cour de Loup in Paris.
Uh-huh.
And Liz keeps up with them, was not at that time really able to be our translator. Quentin mostly became our translator, and I think they had a translator. But now she became fluent.
Hmm.
Um, she spent so much time in France with them, and she met a Canadian, Italian, whatever, Spanish opera singer. So they're married with two kids living in Paris. Um, and that's how she decided to, with her connection to WashU and the wonderful deans there, to start Made in France
Right. Gotcha.
with David
Marchant.
and David Marchand
Yes.
teaching me, my wife Lisa Race, teaching I think the very first summer,
Wow.
and so we would go there, and the other eventuality of it, Rob, is that the parents of Quentin, they in the meantime bought a villa in Burgundy, like an hour south of Paris, and they converted it into a Airbnb basically, but with two studios. So
Wow.
that housed the bulk of Made in France. And whereas a preliminary week seeing every show that was available in Paris, going
Right.
to design studios with your, I don't know if she's still there, the wonderful costume designer
Bonnie Kruger.
Bonnie Kruger.
Yep.
Um, and um, and then we would convene in Melizet is the village, and
Hmm.
then we would do sound experiments, improv, dance, and have the best time of our lives.
Wonderful.
So and Liz just turned 50, and we're close friends to this
Oh.
day.
Oh,
Just texted
nice.
the other day. Yeah, so WashU, there's a few like really key friendships and their artships as well
Yeah.
that have really, really taken me into my future.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. I have so many questions, and I know I don't have that much time, but
I'm
I
okay
want,
with time if you want to
no,
ask. Go ahead.
I want to make sure I ask you a little bit about, for now 36 years, David Dorfman Dance, your company. And for those that don't know, if you don't mind, I'll read this part that your this company has created a movement that seeks to destigmatize the notion of accessibility and interaction in postmodern dance by embracing audiences with visceral, meaningful dance, music, and text.
Hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about what your, that is part of your mission statement, obviously, but um, how did your out of what growth did this dance company emerge? When did it was created 36 years ago? It is now, I believe, the resident company at Connecticut College, where you teach. Talk a little bit about what you do in that company and the
Yeah,
driving
yeah.
force.
And I'll say that I'm just gonna say I'm gonna brag for a second, immodestly brag that we're having a banner year right now, and just to say what we're up to. But
Yeah,
I want to go back to how important performing arts department was in my kind of the fermentation of these ideas.
yeah,
Okay. Um, uh, this year is really super great. We're about to perform probably for 2,500 people outdoors at Bryant Park in New York with our current touring piece called A Way Out of My Body, based on out of body experiences with all original music played
wow,
live by our house band.
wow.
Um, and we're an intergenerational company, so my wife and I, in our mid to late 60s, perform with folks in their 20s on up to the 30s, and we've had 40-year-olds as well. So it's kind of always at least a 20-year break, if not 30-year breaks in our age difference, which I
Sure.
love. And we try to be as diverse as we can in all different ways,
Mm.
body shape, backgrounds, ethnicities, and We're also taking that to Jacob's Pillow, the famed
Yes.
dance retreat in Beckett or Lee, Mass. And so that we're taking the same show this August.
Wow.
And then we'll be doing our new song, which is it's called Truce Songs. I said new song, our new dance, but I
Hmm.
think of it as a song. I think of it as a series of songs.
Hmm.
To me, it softens the idea. And it also kind of reestablishes that we work with original and live music, almost exclusively.
Sure.
And it's on this idea of truce, which is a plastic artificial idea,
Hmm.
but can bring a temporary peace. And um, my my thesis, I suppose, is if we can bring a temporary peace, why can't we bring a more permanent one, even like one motion at a time or one day at a time?
Sure.
And so we're working on that. We'll do it here at Connecticut College in the fall, and then it'll be at this wonderful church in Brooklyn, Irondale,
Mm.
space at Irondale. It's near Brooklyn Academy of Music, where we've performed many times. So this is a perfect location for it. We have this wonderful set by Andrew Schneider. It's this white light box that descends on the space. It's just really great. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think what I want to say is I knew about theater and music and played a lot of music as a kid before I knew about any kind of formal dance.
Mhm.
So um, being that dance and drama are combined at WashU, and that was very influential on me because other schools it's very separate.
It is,
Other
yes.
schools it's very separate. So I've always really loved that. The other thing that I remember is that there are classes at WashU, and I don't know if it's still because curriculum changes all the time,
Of course.
but an intro dance class, it wouldn't be just movement. It would be part of the semester was movement, part of the semester was maybe choreography, or it went back and forth. Then maybe part of it was improvisation.
Hmm.
And I've actually modeled like the way I teach any class a bit on that.
Hmm.
So thank you, WashU again,
Yeah.
PAD. In the idea of I call it a dancing class, that it has part improv, part
Yeah.
socio-political underpinnings,
Sure.
part movement technique, um, and part choreography or
Ah,
making, creating.
nice.
So that influenced me a lot. And then there was a wonderful guy in the department, and again, just like a little peripheral to the department. His name it was Dean Stein. You might want to interview him. He
Okay.
ended up being, I think, president or CEO or something of the Chamber Music Society of America. I mean, like a
Um,
big position with chamber music.
yes.
And I asked him to make a duet, and we made it together. And it kind of was ended up being the model for live sax accents in some kind of way. We did it, and there wasn't all that much movement, but I remember we slapped each other and we spoke. That was like kind of my first performance art piece before I knew what performance art was.
Right.
And and we put it in a little student concert, and Annalise said, "What is the title?" And I said, "We don't have a title." He said, "Okay, it's called Duet Two Men." And so I said, "That sounds good to me, Annalise." And so um, I ended up making like two more, like Duet Two Men 2, Duet Two Men 3 over the
Yeah.
next few years when I started to more seriously dance with
Nice.
a guy in Durham, North Carolina at the American Dance Festival, with someone here at Connecticut College during my master's. So again, that was very seminal, and it was kind of funny. And then there's a piece, if you look, you might get a kick out of it. On our site is it's under, I think, collaborations, maybe.
Uh-huh.
It's live sax and um, I would say the one that is maybe reads the best on video is the one called Horn and the one that's called Bull.
Mhm.
The one that's at a table that's longer, it's a little bit harder to stay with due to video and perhaps our performance.
Sure.
But
Sure. Sure.
um, but Bull has a bunch of slapping in it as a comment on male violence, and there's a direct connection to 1970. I was still in school, so probably 1976 or 77,
Sure.
and then we premiered it in 1990. Um,
Wow. Hmm.
so Yeah. So David, so that's the years of David Dorfman dance. And the other thing, Rob, that I want to really underscore, because it's very important to me. It's not
Sure.
just baloney for a PAD podcast. It's like because I literally came from work at Famous Bar department store and Saks Fifth Avenue. Those are my two department store. I was in retail
Okay.
right out of college. I got really really low paying,
Got it. Got it.
really uninteresting retail jobs.
Sure.
In Yeah, and it's like assistant buyer and assistant department manager. They
Sure.
sound
Sure.
fancy, but whatever. And then I quit 2 weeks before inventory to move to New London, Connecticut. But
Nice.
but the reason I mention that is that I would come after work and take this what I would call a community class. I think you could call it adult education. It was I think it was in the studio that was actually in the athletic center at the time,
Ah.
old Wilson Hall, whatever it was called, Wilson Gym. And that became my like the best part of my day.
Hmm.
I couldn't wait for this 5:30 or 6 o'clock class, whatever it was. And then I met these wonderful friends, and it like propelled me to where I am sitting here right at this moment.
Yes.
So I always remembered community classes as important as, I'd taken the classes my senior year, and
Of
I'd been
course.
performing in the community for all those years, all
Yeah.
those 2 years. But as opposed to being like the super well-groomed dancer coming from high school with all this experience, I was more and gender advantage being male and being really clear about that. Guys get a free ticket that we shouldn't be given.
Right. Right.
Um, and there's so many incredibly talented female identifying dancers that don't have jobs.
Yes.
I try my best to give as many jobs as I can. But but those community classes became such a core to my being
Yeah.
that a few years after the company was established, our company DDD, I said, I'd like to do a community-based project, and that's where like the athletes project, that's what
Got
it
it.
grew out of, is a desire, and wonderful people like Liz Lerman, who's probably been to WashU,
Yes.
just like incredible visionary. I didn't even know who she was. We become close friends,
Oh,
but
wow.
at that stage I didn't know who she was. It was just like I didn't know what I was doing, basically.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
much of what I've done, I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of waded in the water and asked people for help.
Yeah.
And so that community connection
Sure.
at WashU ended up being a big component of DDD's uh, uh, life, really. We
Yeah.
did the athletes project, we did the family project, and then we did something called No Roles Barred project about the roles we play in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And we started a corporate project, but it was at a time when people were becoming less excited about the kind of organization and resources it takes to properly execute a community-based project.
Got it.
Um, and but they're so interesting. So that's a part of the history. And then I've always loved to combine original music, original text, and movement, athletic movement, partnering stuff from contact improvisation, which I first became exposed to at WashU,
Yes.
mostly after graduating. And just it's kind of like sometimes I feel because I've worked on a few musicals now, and Indecent is technically considered a play with songs.
Sure.
But I feel that we're making our own accessible avant-garde musicals
Sure.
that don't they don't push the story forward with each successive song in the same way a musical might,
Hmm.
but the lyrics and the feel of the music is absolutely essential. And
Hmm.
so they're kind of like abstract, non-literal narrative, again, accessible
Yeah.
avant-garde musicals, what we do with these evening length. So been doing that evening length pieces since 2006 with Underground, based on the Weather Underground.
Hmm.
Um, and then not all those early pieces were with original music, but our last like five or so dances have been with original music or a band playing someone else's music with a little bit of original music. So that's
I
been
see.
really important to me. And it's kind of the way that you would create a musical. You would say, okay, what's the text? What's the movement? What's
Right.
the story? Even if it's abstract, and what's the music? Yeah.
Sure, sure. Again, it kind of goes back to what you said about, and I do know of a few of these that a lot of drama and dance departments are separate departments and not part of
Yeah.
this the same souffle together. Um, so
Yeah.
that's just fascinating. Hmm.
Yeah, and the other thing I agree with that is that sometimes we can really cook together well, to go with your
Yes, yes, yeah.
souffle imagery. And the other thing I wanted to say about the company is that I do a solo about my mom in A Way Out of My Body, and her battle with MS. And
Mm.
part of the reason I think I kind of move kind of quickly, and I move like even at this ripe old age, uh, uh, frenetically in a way. And
Uh-huh.
I think I as a 20-year-old, and I wanted to move. The more I moved, the more I thought that maybe she could move a little
Oh,
easier.
yeah.
Um, so, and that was during that time. So, the reason I'm mentioning that is that I feel our work is partly meant to heal.
Hmm.
I'm returning to my other jobs as therapist, that I'm not really trained for, is that I feel that I'm not a dance therapist, but I feel that our work can be therapeutic, and if not purely therapeutic, certainly hoping to be inspirational, and with its urgency and its high level of physicality, um, cathartically reaching a certain peacefulness.
Sure.
So it's almost like we're trying to purge the the not nice things societally and bodily and politically,
Right.
and saying we don't want this, but we want to model um, a high level of trust with our bodies,
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
high level of trust with our bodies, that anyone in the audience, whether you're trained or not, can feel like I could maybe do that. I could
Yeah.
do that in my own way. I
Mhm.
remember even playing football and being thrilled that if you are doing it right and not maliciously or viciously,
Mhm.
that you can just go like that and hit someone really hard with
Yeah.
your equipment on, and it can be like a magic moment,
Hmm.
so that it's like it's kind of a purging, because you're not trying to hurt the person, you're trying to have this relationship. And I
Mm.
feel that sometimes I do this leaning in exercise in so many of my classes, and I call it like a benevolent shoving match, or like a benevolent sumo wrestling,
Sure.
like, because it's not a bad thing to show benevolent force and to be really present and to show what strength you have, and to have the vulnerability at the same time, and the yielding. And
Hmm.
I feel sometimes I think of a subtitle for our true songs as surrender first.
Mm.
Like, what would it be like if we went through our lives not trying to be top dog and not trying to be right all the time, but actually, okay,
Yeah.
I'm here to learn and to listen. I will
Yes.
surrender first,
Mm.
and then see where we go.
Right. Right.
Our dean of the faculty was quoting some wonderful person whose name I can't remember right now, but saying that it was a certain a number of steps towards progressive team building, and it was like it's all in the process. It's not the
Hmm.
bottom line. It's all in the process.
Yes.
Even if you think that it's an end point, it's because of the process,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it occurred in the process. And
Indeed.
that's what we do a lot, because as you know, as a design person, you spend a lot more time in design meetings or in development or changing designs and in rehearsals than you do on stage watching
Yeah.
the finished product.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's all
Um,
about the months and months of process before opening night. That's
yeah.
that's what I tell students. It's not how well your set or your design was sort of employed or deployed. It's about the process. How well do you get along with directors and some, let's say, some difficult personalities sometimes, like how do you manage those? It's been just so delightful to hear about your career and to, oh my goodness, like I have so many more questions, but I know we can't go, it can't be a 3 hour podcast, but I just I'm very, very grateful to you for spending the time to sort of chat with me about everything. You came so highly, not just recommended, but lauded by my current colleagues here, David Marchant being one of them, just,
Mm.
so he's like, you got to talk. If you're going to do this podcast, you got to talk to David Dorfman.
Oh,
So
that's very sweet of David.
I'm happy to say I now have done so. And so, and as a teacher of a creativity class, it's really fascinating for me to get a window into another creative artist of a different genre, another creative artist's process and reasonings behind you doing what you do. And like you said, not trying to be top dog all the time and kind of like observing and responding to a work, responding to a piece of music. It's fascinating to me. So I'm very, very grateful to you for your time.
Well, Rob, you're an incredible host, and I can already tell you're an incredible teacher. And
Aw,
I can imagine that people love to collaborate with you and learn from you because you
aw.
have an incredible way of being, and you're
Mm.
very gracious. So thank you. I say the
I'm
same back to you.
I'm humbled.
Um, no, no, no. I have one other brief story that I think would be
Please.
pertinent to this.
Sure.
Because I was in the business school, and seniors, you do interviews, and
Yeah,
I felt WashU had a really good, like, I can't remember exactly how it worked, but we'll call career office or career placement, whatever.
sure.
And so I was able to garner, not tons, but some key 3 to 5, 6, I can't remember, interviews with, like, the phone company, IBM,
Yeah.
Abraham and Straus department store in New
Sure.
York. I went all the way to New York and decided that I couldn't live on the salary the way I would want to live, and I wasn't ready to dance there yet, so that's why I stayed. But pertinent to this podcast, perhaps, is that the interviewers fairly consistently would say, "Could you please tell me what you think one of, if not your major accomplishment in recent months or this past year of school was?"
Sure.
And I said, "Oh, absolutely. Performing in the senior dance concert was my most thrilling moment this past year."
Hmm.
And I could tell that they were a little bit taken aback because that sounds fascinating. And I always tell the story saying that I didn't get tons of job offers. I got a
Sure.
few,
Sure.
but I was just being honest, and I
Yeah.
could tell that I was not able to say, like, well, when I fixed the computer program or whatever,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
when I did this one business presentation, it was like, no, this is what I really am excited about. And so
Yes.
maybe stupidly or boldly or I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's how much the PAD had influenced me. So
Uh,
in doing business interviews, I was talking about my favorite experience in the studio in the theater.
that's
Yeah.
really lovely. It's a lovely story because I often, students, as you said, part of our job as professors is to sort of counsel. And students come to me and they're not sure what to do. And I like to think of undergraduate school specifically as like a wicked problem, which is very squiggly line. It's not, life is not a straight line ever. And you kind of have to taste all the ice cream and find out what, your line gets straighter as you go along. But I asked them, and I quote Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, famous Hungarian psychologist who wrote a lot on creativity. And I said, what are you doing when you're in flow? Like when you lose track of time, when you forget to eat, when you do things like
Oh,
that.
wow.
And usually, more often than not, that's what you should be doing is the things in life where you lose track of time, where you're sort of blissfully working, but not for the sake of working. It's because you're working because you love what you're doing.
Yes.
It's not always the right answer, but for them, I feel like it sometimes they think of, well, that's in your case, dancing is my jam. It's when I lose track of time. And I'm like, well, maybe that's what you should be doing, or at least part of your life. But it's really wonderful to hear that from you. I remember years ago I was at this is just a sidebar. I was in my line of work going to Yale School of Drama for design is like,
Mm.
the creme de la creme school, right? And so I'm in my 20s and I decide to apply to Yale. I get an interview, but it was an interview in the technical production side, not the design side of Yale.
Oh,
And I met with a guy named Ben Samler. And I remember answering a similar question incorrectly. I didn't know what the right answer should be, but it was the classic, where do you want to be in 5 years question. And I said, well, I'd love to be not only designing but teaching. I love teaching, and maybe
Mm.
a combination of the two would be good for me. And that was not it was the correct answer was commercial New York
Designing.
Broadway theater. Yeah.
Ah,
And I remember the look on his face, and I'm like, oh no, that's maybe I'm in the wrong place. So I never went there, but it was one of those things where I'm like, I think I just taught myself something today that was invaluable, really, for me. But
well,
yes,
I love your I love both those examples, the idea of flow and what you enjoy, because this, seniors and what am I going to do and all that.
yeah,
So that's a beautiful thing that I will now perhaps with your permission adopt.
of course.
And in this speech without reading it, because I think that would be funny on a podcast like this, but I said last night in this toast that I was listening to NPR just driving around,
Mhm.
and Paula Vogel, who wrote Indecent, was
Yes.
interviewed, and she was saying, because she's taught so long, and
Yeah.
we all, like, well, I guess Rebecca was younger, but we both got to Broadway for our first time, and maybe for me only time. She's there again now with Mother Play in
Yeah.
our 60s.
Yeah.
And and she said, I love to teach as much, if not more so, than creating,
Mm.
because it's something that I've done for so long, and I love to create opportunities for my students to excel and to create. And if they get to Broadway or whatever it is before me, that makes me happy as well.
Amen.
And
Yeah.
one of her students was quoted, her former students, who's now, award winning in their own right, said that in the first day or something, Paula said, I want you to open doors. And I want you to open doors not for your own self to go through merely, but for other people to go through.
Hmm.
And that's what Paul has done for so long. And that's what I try to do as well. And
Yeah.
then I said last night, I said, teaching is a creative act.
It is.
It is. So and we're all being creative all the time.
Yeah.
And if we start cordoning off, by definition, it's not even that important. It's like,
Yeah.
how can we be creative? That's where, I hear over and over watching the news last night with Lisa, my wife, it's like leadership is failing in the world, and that's why there's so much violence that gets proliferated. If
Yeah.
leaderships would be more both risky and honest and
Hmm.
creative, we would not have so many people starving and being killed.
It's true.
And but I think that everything gets cordoned out. Oh, those are artists. Oh, the
Yeah.
arts are creative. Look at how business and technology is creative. It's unbelievable. And again, it goes back to the well-rounded person and the importance of
Yeah.
arts in our society and in our life. I also
Indeed.
quoted Maurice Merleau-Ponty,
Uh-huh.
um, and so Ponty offered the idea that the body, not consciousness, is our primary instrument for understanding the world.
Hmm.
To be in a body is not to be contained, but to be exposed to the world.
Hmm.
From our first breath, we are in need of other people. And
Wow.
I just love that. And I said, my world exists 24/7, rotating around the body, what the body can do,
That's
what
true.
the body can dream.
Hmm.
Um, our bodies are what we take with us every moment of every day. And that's
Hmm.
why I love what I do so damn much.
Yeah.
Please treasure not only your bodies, but those around you and those very far from you,
Hmm.
with empathy, with safe touch, with vulnerability, with
Hmm.
service,
Hmm.
with kindness, with gentleness and nuance.
Hmm.
That is where the love is. And please continue to open doors. Be kind, be wild, be you. When
Hmm.
we're dancing, we're not hurting other people.
Uh,
Yes.
I love it. Oh, I'm just so inspired by chatting with you.
Oh,
This is a
same,
real
same to
treat.
you.
Um,
Yay.
Thank you so much.
You're
Hey,
so welcome, Rob. This is a blast. Let me know if you
it's
need anything
oh, it's
else.
such a treat. I'm very, very grateful to you. And if you are ever back through St. Louis sometime, please look us up. We'd love to have you come back and
Yeah,
maybe interact with our students if you have time to do so. But
I would love to.
thank you.
I would love to do that. Again, I want to perform there again. I want to do workshops or whatever. So if you have any ideas through PAD, or if you have a guest even for like 2 days,
Okay,
just let me know and
great.
I'd be happy to come out. And yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you,
All right.
David.
Have a great day. Thank
You
you.
too. Thank you so much for your time. All right, my many thanks to David Dorfman for joining the podcast. I'm very, very excited he had the time to away from dance to chat with me. If you'd like to chat with me, don't hesitate. Just don't. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to interview you if you are PAD or PAD adjacent. We would love to talk to you about your time at WashU and your time in performing arts. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.